I do not care what Paul Finebaum says. Lane Kiffin's not going to Florida or anywhere else. So quit asking.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to today's Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Today, we're diving into Lane Kiffin's latest takedown of Paul Finebaum, a showdown that's kind of becoming a little bit of a habit. I think this is in direct response to Finebaum's recent hypotheticals about Lane being a candidate for other coaching jobs. I mean, it's clear that Lane Kiffin has had enough with his name being used for clicks, and he's starting to push back a little bit. Even on Barrett Sallee's College Football Smothered and Covered podcast, we're going to play a little bit of that on this show. He absolutely takes down Florida's football program with what the next coach is going to have to do, while talking about how much Lane has it made in Oxford, Mississippi. Don't forget to check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for more takes across the SEC, college football, and even Ole Miss. Thanks for listening, and let's get going. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and every day that make this show what it is. Ultimate College Football HC. It's a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Begin your coaching legacy today. So I was all ready to do my normal Wednesday What to Watch For episode and talk about things that were important in the Ole Miss Wake Forest game, as Ole Miss is getting ready to face a Power 4 opponent for the first time, when all of a sudden at about 11 o'clock in the morning, Lane Kiffin decided to fire off a tweet at Paul Finebaum. And as we all know, when Lane Kiffin tweets, it tends to make a little bit of news. He tweeted at Paul Finebaum another post that was quoting Paul Finebaum about how there's no chance that Auburn loses to Cal. None. Book it. And Paul Finebaum, Kiffin tweeted at Finebaum publicly, "What are you good at again?" Which is a callback to something he said at SEC Media Days. This is another interaction that goes back to SEC Media Days. And this wasn't about a football game. Don't pretend this was about a football game. This was about something more. Last week, I think it was last week or the week before, when right after Billy Napier lost to Miami, all of a sudden, Paul Finebaum started talking about hypotheticals of whether or not Lane Kiffin would take the Florida job. And Florida fans started getting really loud and started going into fake it until you make it mode and trying to see what's going on. You're starting to hear rumors and all this about, hey, boosters and all of this stuff going on. The phone tree gets cranked up. The whole idea that normally is reserved for November, it's going in early September. And a lot of that is Paul Finebaum's fault for what he was talking about in hypotheticals after one loss on the season by Billy Napier. Now, here's the problem. Lane Kiffin's sick of his name being used by people for SEO clicks. Everybody likes to talk about Lane Kiffin and all that because it works. To put that in perspective, Lane Kiffin goes into the metadata, into a tag in the metadata for every single show I put out because he is such a good searchable term. And that allows it to, no matter what it's titled, Lane Kiffin will bring up that video. That's what I do. And I'm a friend of the program, so to speak. Now, if you're an enemy, you're doing the same thing. And between Lane Kiffin and between Deion Sanders, it's all SEO, basically catnip at this point. But it's a situation that I don't think that Ole Miss fans need to worry about that. We're going to have Barrett Sallee on in just a second talking about that. We got a couple of segments from his show, College Football Smothered and Covered, that he talked about Lane to Florida. And also on Monday's show, he talked about Jackson Dart and the Heisman. So I do recommend on everybody to go to the College Football Smothered and Covered, the Barrett Sallee page, and subscribe to that if you have not already. It's really good. Barrett Sallee does a really good job of honestly taking down the Florida program at the moment, where he actually admits that Ole Miss is a better football program right now, and especially for Lane Kiffin, than the Florida Gators. And Florida's going to have to take some work. You know, there's two coaches that have coached down for the Florida Gators that's had success. After that, it's been just a whole bunch of blah, a whole bunch of Jim McElwain, a whole bunch of Will Muschamp. If you are not Steve Spurrier or not Urban Meyer, you have struggled in Gainesville. But let's go ahead and start this off. This is Barrett Sallee from the College Football Smothered and Covered podcast.
Will Lane jump ship? Will Lane Kiffin jump ship if Billy Napier is fired? Is Florida a better job than Ole Miss? The answer is no, not for Lane. Because it's all about perspective, right? And there's a great piece that my friend Chris Lowe just put up with Lane Kiffin, talking about how he feels at home and how he's matured and his sobriety and all this stuff that's gone on in his life, both professionally and personally. And it goes back to what I've said for a long time. The difference between a top 5 job and a top 50 or a top 60 or a top 70 job, it's condensed. It's condensed. You go back and look at the Steve Spurrier era, or even after Ron Zook, when Urban got hired, Florida was on a pedestal, man. It was way up there because of prestige, the ability to win at a high level, money, all that stuff, right? Things have changed because, A, the salaries are much closer, not just at the Power 5 level or Power 4 level, but I mean, hell, there are some group of 5 teams that are going to start spending some money here in the not too distant future that's comparable to what those numbers were 5 years ago across major college football. So there's that, but it's also about personality, right? Does Lane fit at Florida? Does Lane fit anywhere else, at Alabama, at Auburn, when Auburn pursued him? It's about his mindset. And I think talking to people around that program, I haven't talked to Lane about this, and he wouldn't allow me to talk about this publicly anyway, but he is perfectly built for Ole Miss.
He is absolutely perfectly built for Ole Miss, and that is from the Barrett Sallee College Football Smothered and Covered podcast, and we got another clip coming up in a second. It is a situation that there is no other program in the United States of America in college football that is more perfect for Lane Kiffin than Ole Miss. Ole Miss has given him essentially a blank check. The fans are completely bought in. They're frenzied and giving to the Grove Collective that has Ole Miss as one of the top 5 collectives in the entire country. People are buying season tickets at unprecedented levels and tickets at unprecedented. You have just put 66,000 people in the stadium for Furman and then for MTSU. There is a legitimate conversation of whether or not Ole Miss can hit 70,000 for the Georgia Bulldogs. Lane Kiffin did that. Lane Kiffin deserves all the credit in the world. And as long as he doesn't wreck this Ferrari, it's going to continue its upward ascent. Here's some more.
And as far as Florida being a better program than Ole Miss in this landscape, again, it does go back to the beholder, but it's just so hard for me to wrap my arms around why anybody would want to go to Florida right now. If you're a top tier head coach, right? And I just got done saying that top 5 job, top 50 job, not much difference. Depends on the person, right? But if you're an established Power 4 head coach, would you want to go into a situation at Florida where you've had two straight 3-and-outs? Well, 3 count McElwain. You're just churning through head coaches. At Florida, you churn through head coaches. Nobody can get it right. And you have a president who resigned. And prayers up to Ben Sass and his family. It's about as dysfunctional as you can get, because the people that would even hire you might not even be the ones that extend you if you're successful. So, no, Florida is not a better job. It's not a better program than Ole Miss in this particular landscape. There's stability at Ole Miss. There's instability at Florida. There's upside to win a national championship at Ole Miss. You also have that at Florida. So for Lane, it's all about personality. Does he want to deal with the crap at Florida, or does he want to continue being the king of Oxford? I'm pretty sure everybody knows the answer to that.
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. That's Barrettsley again, college football smothered and covered. Check that out. Subscribe if you have a moment as well. The long and the short of it is I don't think Lane Kiffin's going anywhere. I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to the NFL. I don't think that Lane Kiffin's going to any other college. I think that Lane Kiffin is in Oxford for the foreseeable future. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It happens. But all of the signs are there for him to stay. When all the warning signs that we had going into 2022 and all of that mess happened at the end of the year with Auburn, this is a completely different feeling and a different landscape. I think he is genuinely settled down just a little bit. And because of that, I think he has a chance to be at Ole Miss for, honestly, the foreseeable future. We'll see how it goes. Enough of the nonsense. It's time to focus on the first road game of the Ole Miss Rebels season. The first road game is always crucial, setting the tone for the whole season. Can the Rebels rise to the occasion? Do not miss it. Hey, Locked On Ole Miss fans, I do want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. It's called Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of, say, Ole Miss? Of course you can. You're watching this video. We play that game every Saturday anyway. From recruiting players to hiring coaches to overseeing training camps and scholarships and all of that stuff, you control every detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's what I really love about the game. You're responsible for calling the offensive plays during the game. Your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. You can play on the go or play when you want and when you want, honestly. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Ole Miss fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure you take advantage of this perk as it will get you off to a strong start. To download the game, visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the App Store. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. You know, Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. You know, there's not a bad seat in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. And there's a sellout this week in Winston-Salem if you're planning on going to the Wake Forest Demon Deacons game. Game Time can hook you up with tickets for that game as well. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, all of that good stuff. They take the guesswork out of Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated football season in Ole Miss history, I might be able to help you out with tickets as well. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. College football is back this weekend. Week 3 is already here, and it's not too late to catch up before the weekend kickoff. The SEC, ACC, Big 10, and Big 12, they have squad shows where the host of Locked On, all of the experts of Locked On that you can subscribe to through Locked On College Football Podcast, they join for squad programs that go down to your favorite channel as well. Who has a chance to make the playoffs? Which teams will cause the most chaos in their conference? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Really interesting stuff. Now, let's turn the page just a little bit and talk about what to watch for in this game. Number one is, how does Ole Miss look away from the This is the first road game, and just like last year, the first road game being at Tulane, this game could go a long way towards the makeup of this team. There are some new players. There's some pretty serious leaders, but there are some new players that Ole Miss is going to have to acclimate, and this first road game is going to be a big test. Second, Ole Miss linebackers dealing with that Wake Forest RPO, Chris Pupal Jr., TJ Daugherty, Corey Coleman, Tyler Banks, those players, Suntaran Perkins, those guys that are on the second level of the defense and how they handle that Wake Forest RPO is going to go a long way towards the score. I do not think that Wake Forest is good enough to win the game, but they are good enough to make it to where Ole Miss can't cover the game. If it works well and Ole Miss can't seem to figure out that RPO and Wake Forest is able to move the ball and Buster's still a problem and all of that, you're looking at a 31-21 type football game. This is the 15th out of 17 ranked preseason team in the ACC. They just lost to Virginia 31-30. And weather is going to be a major talking point in this game, as in what kind and how much. Is it going to be a thunderstorm? Is it just going to be rain? Is it going to be sunny? Is it going to be cloudy? Is it going to be overcast? The Weather Channel has it at over 65% chance of rain right now, but we are still at Wednesday. There's still some time to determine what goes on. But let's talk about the linebacker play, and let's talk about that RPO that is so tricky from time to time. Chris Pupal, he is known for his run-stopping ability, and whenever it comes, he's playing linebacker and the other team runs the football, he likes to come out, shot out like a cannon. Against Wake Forest's RPO, that could be problematic in the slow mesh RPO because they want you to come down hard so it opens up more space in the linebacker area. This could be a game to where Ole Miss plays stacked linebackers from time to time if they can get away with it, to have somebody that sits in the hole of where that tight end or that slot receiver is going to get to, as opposed to having people lined up. You might see them drop off to something like that so that you can cover those areas and kind of count on 5-5 to stop the run. If you are good enough to do it, I mean, it's probably worth a shot. But Chris Paul is a good player, and him coming off like a just shot out of a cannon in the run game, that could be problematic by the slow mesh RPOs. TJ Daugherty, I think he's going to be fine. You know, the Ole Miss linebacker position is going to be pretty great. And of course, just like I talked yesterday, penetration by the interior defensive line is going to be crucial against this Wake Forest offense. Now, like I said, they lost last week 31-30 against Virginia. The opener, they beat an FCS opponent. I think not by much. I think they gave up 17, 18 points somewhere in there as well. Wake is going to be a step up, but it's not going to be at it might be the bottom part of the SEC, but it won't be in the second tier from the bottom in the SEC. Like, I think Auburn would beat Wake Forest. I think Vanderbilt would beat Wake Forest this year. I think South Carolina, Kentucky and Mississippi State, I don't know. Mississippi State just dropped a game on the road at Arizona State, and Arizona State won 3 games last year. So we have to see if that is Arizona State being good or Mississippi State being bad. And Kentucky looked awful against South Carolina. I think you need to pay attention. And we're going to talk about this as that game. And during that game week, that defensive end that South Carolina has in Williams-Brice, as quick as it is, you're going to have to figure out how to basically chip that defensive end, or that noise and all that could be a problem. This is a guy that wrecked the game against Kentucky, and this was on the road. So we'll have to see exactly what it looks like. He's kind of having a Harold Perkins type beginning to his SEC career. But the linebackers have a huge test because of the slow mesh RPO and the space in between the linebackers and the safeties. Those 7 players are going to be huge. And whenever you look at the safeties and the defensive backfield, they've had some busts. Busts were a problem. We talked about it on yesterday's show. Busts have been a problem throughout the first 2 weeks. If it doesn't get cleaned up with what's going on in the linebacker game, it could be problematic for those weird gimmicky RPOs. So we'll see exactly what it looks like going into this. I mean, it kind of is what it is, right? And this is Ole Miss's first road game, the first true road game of the season. And I do think that it deserves being talked about as well, being the first road game of the season, because the Tulane game, Ole Miss, the way they won that game and the way it happened did so much for the psyche of that football team that honestly carried Ole Miss throughout the season, to where them being down in Alabama and in Georgia, those teams were good enough to prevent Ole Miss from coming back. But at the end of the game, the talent difference between Ole Miss and everybody else, it showed in the fourth quarter and the players that Ole Miss had. And in the fourth quarter, Ole Miss just took over ball games. They took over the Tulane game, the Arkansas game, the honestly Vanderbilt game. I think I said Arkansas, but we have a situation to where the talent was able to do it. Now the talent has gone up even more. So we'll see exactly how it goes. It's the first road game. Does Ole Miss face adversity? I talked to Bill Flowers on Monday, and he said that he wants Ole Miss to be punched in the mouth and see how they respond. Jackson Dart said in a press conference one of the last couple of weeks, he's looking forward to the first taste of adversity. And all of that was really big factors. The first road game, the first time you sleep in a hotel, the first time you have meetings in the hotel, the bus ride over to the stadium, the timing that happens whenever you're not in your own environment, everything just is a little different. It's one of the main reasons for years, whenever I was at Ole Miss, we went to the Ramada Inn in Tupelo, Mississippi. So whether you're at home or on the road, you still get to deal with all these things in the same way. It's a way to cut down and make it routine staying at those hotels. Now they stay at the Inn at Ole Miss, which I'm sure it's nicer and all of the things are exactly what you want. But the Inn at Ole Miss is not that Ramada Inn. There's not the feeling of being on the road whenever you're staying in the heart of the campus. Just wanted to say that as well. So weather has become the de facto third team in this game with a 65% chance of rain, according to the Weather Channel. It looks like wet draw ball drills might be in Ole Miss's future. Stay tuned to how the Rebels are preparing to face Mother Nature on the field. You know, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3 weeks of a free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment you can cancel at any time. Maybe you want to bet on Ole Miss and their 23.5 point favorite line against Wake Forest, or maybe the over-under of 63.5 points is calling your name. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege or /LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. The weather is becoming a de facto story in this game. And I don't know, it's Wednesday. So by the time Saturday gets here, everything could change, but we'll see how it looks. And in the next few days, everybody be careful because it looks like a hurricane's about to spin up and go through parts of Mississippi and Louisiana. So everybody be careful. Make sure all your supplies, your batteries are, batteries for your flashlights, all of that good stuff. Take care of yourself. The Floridian that's worried about hurricanes, that's obvious. But Mother Nature and the weather is going to be a major story in this game. Somebody mentioned in the comments, special teams play and injuries become a concern whenever you're dealing with a wet field. Now, I'm not necessarily worried about injuries. I do not know that it is going to rain enough to where the field is so saturated that injuries become a real concern. I do think the footing is not going to be as sharp as it would have been on a perfectly clear day. But I do not think it's going to be at the point where they're just slipping and sliding around. That is the good thing of having the AstroTurf field at Wake Forest. Now, but I do think special teams problem and things like that and turnovers, like if you fumble the football and stuff like that, like Rashad Amos against at Miami of Ohio against somebody in the bowl game. I forget the opponent, but he fumbled 3 times in that game. He ran for over 200 yards, but he fumbled 3 times. It was because it was pouring. It was like a deluge. And because of that, you have to be careful with ball security in this game. Henry Parrish, solid running back. I'm waiting on Ulysses Bentley to break out. I don't understand that entirely at this point, but we'll see how it goes as we get closer to SEC play. Matt Jones, I do want to see what he can do against Power 4 competition. He did not have the best game, but let's see exactly what happened. He looked a little bit better as the game went on and he was able to score a touchdown. The weather is going to be a big story in this football game. It's going to determine whether you kick off, whether you take the ball, whether you defer to the second half. If a thunderstorm is supposed to hit at 7:30 when the game starts at 6:30, you obviously know that you want to start as quickly as possible and take the ball. If it's a situation where it's thunderstorming at 6:30, but it's supposed to be out by 7:30, you obviously want to defer. This is what the dimensions of chess that Lane Kiffin's going to have to play. The weather, like I said, has become a de facto third player in this game. And we'll see how it goes. Again, I do not look for Wake Forest to get Ole Miss on the scoreboard, but I didn't look for Northern Illinois to get Notre Dame either. But it's a situation to where if Ole Miss goes in and plays clean, if Ole Miss goes in and takes care of business, they should win the game fairly comfortably. And we talked about yesterday, having Juice Wells and Trey Harris on the outside scares the defense. It would scare anybody. Georgia's going to have to account for them as well. So this isn't a Wake Forest thing. This isn't anybody thing. So they're going to do that, which is going to put people further away from the line of scrimmage, which is going to make it easier to run the football. And you could see Henry Parrish or Ulysses Bentley. One of these days, Ulysses Bentley has to break out and have a day a little bit as well. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Anyway, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're number 1 in the Ole Miss area. Your support means the world to us. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link down below in the description, so you don't even need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider, the best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports. Our texting program sends you notifications on everything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college football coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is down in the description. And for those of you on YouTube, we will send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.